Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Retirement Readiness Podcast. As always, you're stuck with the two of us. This is Tim Regan, the founder and wealth partner at PrairieView Wealth Partners, and I'm Katie Umland.
Hey, Katie.
Hi. So glad you're joining us today. Today, we're going to talk about the risk and reward of your investments in retirement.
Yeah, I think that's something that's probably always good to take some time on, right? Everybody seems to have some concern, especially, like right now as we're talking about heading into an election year, and we just are coming off of a cycle where we've had a lot of talk around inflation and that kind of stuff. So really, how do you balance your risk and reward in a portfolio? Probably is a good topic to spend some time on. So when you hear risk reward, what do you think of, Katie?
Well, when this first came across my desk, risk reward, I guess I kind of take it literal and think, well, if I'm going to retire, isn't that all reward?
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's not. If your portfolio doesn't perform well, then there's not a whole lot of reward, right? Then maybe that's the risk
just
part.
The not working part feels like
Yeah.
the reward part. But yeah, exactly like you just said, if your portfolio is not ready, then that's the risk.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think it ties into kind of our whole conversation around, kind of living your two-comma life, where in order for you to be able to do that, you have to manage that portfolio in a good way so that you're taking enough risk that it's going to outperform taxes and inflation and that kind of stuff, but not so much risk that you can't kind of live your life the way that you want to, because you're always nervous about, oh, market's down now, I better not spend, or it's up now I can, type of a thing.
What I always think about is, you obviously want to have enough money to get you through until you eventually pass away, but you also want to spend what you have too. And that's like that balancing act.
It totally is. And I think that's where the two-comma lifestyle comes in, where it's living in abundance, knowing that, okay, I've got enough, God will provide, but yet I'm not living like money's not an object, because
Right.
I have to be careful with it as well. And really, when we start talking about how do you manage that risk, I know we talked about it maybe a couple episodes ago, but we've got that tool that we utilize now. It's called Nitrogen, is the software that we use, but it'll actually help people go through. I think it's an 8-question kind of questionnaire, where at the end of that, it will give you your risk speed limit, and will say, here's how much risk you personally are comfortable taking inside of your portfolio. And when you do that, you might have to adjust some of your retirement expectations based upon how much risk you personally are willing to take.
So does it also take into account like where you're at in your life? Like, does it just say, oh, this is how risk adverse you are, go for it? Or does it say, oh, you're super risk adverse, but you're also nearing retirement, so let's maybe.
Yeah. So, and that's where kind of the, computers can't do it all type of thing. That's where the conversation comes in with an advisor, because it's not going to necessarily do a good job of taking that into consideration. But it will help with who you are, how much risk are you personally willing to take, and give you that risk score. And then it's kind of the soft measure of that is, all right, so that's the quantified, calculated piece. The soft side is, let's match that with what your goals are, and how do we get the exact right portfolio for you.
So I'm sure that kind of changes throughout your life. Like, I'm thinking about myself, and if I would have taken that test, 10 years ago, I would have been, oh, this sounds great. Sure, let's do it. But now I'm more like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah. Well, and with that test, just as an aside, if you're listening, you want to take the test, we've got it on the website, free. There's no charge or anything if you want to kind of assess what is your risk profile. But you're right. As people's lives change, their outlook changes a little bit, and it's surprising though, not as much as you would think. Typically, people that are the type that like to take a risk always are the type that like
Sure.
to take a risk. Now, it might be in
different ways, or
yeah, and it could be kind of like, this stage of my life, I'm willing to take a risk with this part of my money, but I wouldn't risk this part, and so it can change, and it's all relative with kind of what you were alluding to, kind of where am I at in life and what am I trying to do.
Sure. So when you say like it's an question survey? Is it like,
And just
mm,
as an aside, like I want to be really clear. Anytime you hear me give a specific number,
oh, it means
it means
nothing.
I made
Yeah.
it up.
Well, I was going to say, is the first question like, okay, your dream boy, is he blonde hair
Uh,
or
no, no,
it's not that kind of a
different. Yeah, yeah. I don't
quiz?
know if this one will be found in Cosmo or not. Yeah, yeah,
Then I'm not interested.
yeah. Done, done. No, but it will. Might not go be that interesting. But the interesting part of it is that what we can do from a kind of a planning perspective, we can actually take your risk score and your speedometer, if you will, because that's what it looks like. It looks like a speed limit sign, and we can actually plug in your portfolio and it will tell us what the speed limit of your portfolio is.
Okay,
And
so like, do
so,
they match? Are we aligned with?
absolutely. And it's funny because we just had a couple that took it, and the score can go up to 104. That's the most risky.
Okay,
And the husband
so
came,
Alex would be 110.
maybe,
Yeah.
yeah. And the husband came back in this case at a 78,
Oh,
and the
okay.
wife was 22.
Oh, wow.
And so it's
That's
like there's a
oh,
whole different conversation that we have to have here around how are we going to manage these assets and
sure.
what does that look like. And so even though it seems like, oh yeah, everybody talks about what's, how do you balance risk in your portfolio and how do I get enough return and all that kind of stuff, well, that seems pretty standard. There really are ways that you can get very specific with it and not just guess at what you think it should be.
So what kind of is it just investments? Is it like total portfolio? Like what kind of things are we talking about when we're looking at risk?
Yeah. So when we're talking risk here, we're really talking about, and it's funny. So I guess maybe we should define what that means. Our definition of risk is not what's the chances that you're going to lose money. That is a definition of risk. And as you go through the questionnaire, that's how it phrases things. It phrases it with, you could gain this much or you could lose this much. What type of portfolio do you prefer? But the way I like to think about risk really is what's the likelihood that I'm not going to get the outcome that I'm looking for?
Sure.
And so when I think about risk in a portfolio, uh, I know there are going to be years when I lose money.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to happen. So I can't say I want to eliminate risk because I don't want to lose any money. What we have to look at instead is my objective is to be able to retire and live to be 123. And if that's my objective, I also plan on having enough money to support me for that length of time. So if that's the case, then failure, the risk is that I don't have enough money to do that. It's not that at year 2032 I had a down year and I lost a little bit of value. And so that's the balancing act. It's how much risk do I have year to year, but then how much risk do I have of not actually living my dream retirement because I didn't manage the assets right.
Interesting. So just I guess I'm just curious, when you have clients take this test, are they like usually surprised by their results?
Actually, it's surprising that usually not completely surprised. Um, but that couple that was at that huge spread, 78 and 22,
Yeah.
they definitely were surprised. Now they knew that they had like that they were more,
Variance.
yeah, but they never would have expected, I don't think that.
So now is this going to be part of our like premarital
I think
counseling?
it has to be. It just has to be.
Like it's
Yeah.
kind of important to know where you stand on that.
How about it? How about it? Well, where I think it's important is that a lot of times in a household, one spouse or the other usually takes care of the money stuff.
Yeah.
And so where it can come into play is if
Hmm.
the spouses haven't had that conversation, that could be a cause for, I don't know.
Yeah. And definitely not that a 78-22 aren't a match.
No, for
Like
sure. They clearly are. They've been
they
married for a long time, but
right. If anything, that might be that they are a perfect
yeah, yeah,
match, that they're different. But it's funny to know
yeah.
that
Well, and what's
where
crazy is
that where
so in
that
that case,
stands.
the 78 was the one that really managed most of the money. And so then if we don't have that conversation, them as a couple might not be deciding, let's go 55, right?
Right.
And so left to in this case it was the husband, left to the husband's devices, it would always be 78. But his wife might not be in that position,
Right.
uh And really, during their lifetimes when they're both together probably doesn't make a big difference, because a lot of times the spouse is like, hey, I trust you, do your thing. But if something were to happen to him, and all of a sudden the wife is in a position of, I have to now manage these things, and I'm inheriting a portfolio that's a 78 and not a 22. uh it just creates a lot of gap there.
Well, and I think that's also important to know because, the 78 might be thinking, oh, we have to, stash it away and really prepare or really save, or I don't want to run out. Where the 22 might be thinking, oh, great, when we retire, we're going to go on trips and we're
Yep.
going to, like they might just be mismatched without realizing.
Without ever even knowing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
without realizing that you had different expectations of what that life looks like.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny, as you think about risk in a portfolio, uh, we're actually seeing some models right now that are suggesting that the stock and bond markets going forward might not yield as much as they have historically, uh, at least for a short period of time. And if that's the case, that makes it even more critical that you have that conversation, because if you're thinking I'm taking a risk of 78 because I'm going to make, you know, a bunch of money, and all of a sudden that's not the case,
Hmm.
well, we need to reevaluate and just say, what is the right size risk to take?
And do we need to make some changes or
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, which really
interesting?
comes down to some of the diversification conversations that we've had in the past, where, from our perspective, as you look to build that portfolio, it's not just how much do I have in stocks and bonds and that kind of stuff, but it's also what's my tax treatment and how do I diversify from a tax perspective? Because if you think about all of those different risks, right? There's the risk of losing money. There's the risk of running out of money, the risk of not getting the desired result that I had. But there's also the risk of, I lost half of my earnings to
Yep.
taxes because I didn't
Didn't plan
plan
for
for
that.
that. And so, really, when we start talking about a risk management conversation inside of a portfolio, it many times is much more broad than what people think about when they first hear,
Hmm.
how do I manage risk in a portfolio?
Or it could mean to you risk for leaving money on the table,
Oh, absolutely.
and not from a tax perspective,
Yep.
but oh shoot, I should have done
Yep.
this.
I could have made how
Yeah.
much? Yeah. And that's why a lot of times we think about, financial planning is not just about getting you the outcome that you want, but it's also about helping you to avoid making mistakes and avoid missing some of the things that you should have done that could really hurt.
Where Alex and I are debating, do we stay in the house we have now? Do we build? Do we move? All those kind of conversations. And I feel like we're having a risk reward conversation daily.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, and especially I'm sure for you guys, because uh not to get into your personal business, but I'm sure you're one of the folks that have those really low mortgages, low
Exactly.
mortgage rates. And
Rates.
so now all of
Yeah.
a sudden you're like, wait a minute, how do we justify going from a low mortgage rate to something that's higher than that? And what does that do to the affordability factor and everything else?
And I mean, it doesn't directly impact our retirement today, this decision, but it's a risk reward conversation nonetheless. And that eventually will,
Yep.
I mean, have long term
Oh, for sure.
effects
Well,
on.
and for you guys, that risk reward, now you start talking about what is the risk and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, so do we choose to pay more in an interest rate, but the reward is we have the kids in the house we want them in, and
Longer. And
exactly, getting into the school district we want, or whatever,
exactly.
right? I mean, it's a different risk reward trade off, but it's risk reward none the same.
Yeah. And eventually if we don't move, okay, are we putting this money that we would have put as a down payment? Are we putting it towards our retirement, or are we putting it towards our kids, passing it down the line? Or are
Yeah.
we,
Well, and how does that, like everybody has to wrestle with, how does that affect your ability to finance an education for them, or uh, for them to do junior hockey or ride horses or whatever? Like
exactly.
uh, it's all part of that.
So it's just interesting how everybody has
Yeah. At each stage of life,
exactly, there's risk and
it has the
reward.
same conversation. Well, and really, I mean, if you go back to your decision to say, all right, I'm going to stop working full time and I'm going to be a full time mom, uh, and part time podcast celebrity extraordinaire. Uh, that's all risk reward at the same
Yep.
time, right? And so everything we do in life is truly risk and reward. When you get into retirement planning, it just starts to become even more exacerbated or real or important on an investment side. Because right now for you and Alex, you know, you guys can both go to work, you can both earn more money, you've got a long life ahead of you. So if you make a mistake,
Yes, we have
you've got
time
time
to,
to recover.
yeah,
Where as people get closer to retirement, that's not the case. They're like, man, all the money I've got is all the money I'm ever
you're
gonna
laying in
have.
your
And
bed at
yeah,
that point.
exactly. Exactly.
You're not making it
Nope.
anymore.
Nope.
So,
You're in it. You're in it. Yeah. 100%. And so it just, it becomes way more magnified. And because if I make a mistake, I don't have quite as long of a time horizon to fix it.
yeah. I guess I don't know how to wrap this guy up
Well,
today.
yeah, I think today we just really have to talk about my encouragement would be, if you don't know your risk score, just head out to the website, get your risk score. If you don't know what your portfolio's risk score is,
To match
to
them.
match that, if you just give us a call, we can give you a link and you can upload holdings, and we can easily give you, here's what the risk scores of your portfolio, here's the risk score that you have, and just to make sure that you're on the right track. And then if you have questions, obviously we're available to do that too. But as we think about that unwrapping of that 2 comma life and saying, how do I live in abundance? How do I live feeling like I can do the things that I want, feeling like, uh, that millionaire lifestyle? A big part of that is balancing, how much risk do I take in my portfolio that I feel confident I'm going to outpace taxes and inflation, but it's not so much that I feel not confident because it's too volatile for me.
We have not done a mailbag in a long time.
I know. That's because I've been wanting to wait until we can have Ruby announce the mailbag. Uh, so Ruby,
Who's
my
Ruby?
dog, yeah. So Ruby, our dog, who we've got a mailman outfit for, we're gonna record her coming in with the mailbag. Unfortunately, Ruby's ACL was torn, and
So she's not carrying anything
no,
right now.
she's on a lifting restriction, where she has gone through rehab, which is just nuts to think that I've got a dog that
I
went
have
to.
not heard that Ruby tore
Yes,
ACL.
we had torn ACL. We've had
Too hard to fetch,
yeah,
or
it was
yeah.
actually. Yep, yep. And she has had surgery to repair it.
Oh,
She has gone through underwater treadmill work as part
Ruby
of the.
definitely. It's a fact now. She is your most expensive child.
She is. Yes, she is. Although Maddie is definitely trying to challenge her
Outpace.
for that. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. But no, so it's funny because this time of year we always have the same things that come through. And I think it's probably the best mailbag question of the time, because people are starting to think about getting their taxes done, and what does that look like? And the question that we always get is, when should I expect to get my 1099s in the mail? Why haven't I gotten them yet? And that kind of stuff. And what happens is, whenever you're dealing with an investment portfolio that is not an IRA, so it's like your trust account, your joint account, all of the uh, underlying investments, especially for the international stocks, take a longer time to kind of aggregate and get that 1099 information out. And so for brokerage accounts, they have an extended period that they can wait before they send out the 1099. So you might be accustomed to getting your 1099s at the end of January. Our encouragement is just wait until the end of February. If you have investment accounts, it's normal. That's going to come back later, but that's way better than getting it early and then having to get an amended 1099 and have to amend your return. So, but this time of year, and we're recording this, middle of February of 24, and
Yeah, the office's phones do go
they
off about this a lot.
they do,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so mailbag.
Yeah.
I always want to come up with a song. We have a
It's
mailbag
a
song,
song and a dog.
a song and dog. Yes.
Got to do something to make
Yeah.
that mailbag more exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we talked a little bit, Katie, about you and Alex thinking about buying a house.
Yes.
Well, not buying a house, you have a house, but
Yes, we're I think we have decided to table for now because we do have such a good interest rate.
yep.
Alex and I take forever to make decisions. So we just decided
Which is
let's
so crazy to think, because I think since we started this podcast, you guys have sold a
bought and sold how
condo,
many
bought
homes?
a lake house, sold a lake house,
Moved
bought
to the
another
lake
home.
house,
Yes,
move out of
of
the
the
lake
lake house. Yeah,
house.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'd hate to see what happens if you guys made fast decisions.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
exactly. So, yeah, I think tabling tabling any house moves for now. The
Yeah.
big news in our house is that Dylan is potty trained.
Wow. That's
I
awesome.
know.
Yeah. Well, and it's
So,
crazy. Boys usually are not
yep,
good with that,
I
but
know. Since I am a stay-at-home mom now, I'm trying to convince Alex that I should get like a potty training bonus.
oh, I completely agree.
Like,
Totally agree.
I think that I mean, we're not
Only makes
saving on
sense.
diapers for
Only makes sense, Katie. I
I
completely agree.
so
Well, and it's funny how that goes. So anybody who knows us knows that Sarah and I both tend to be type A personalities a little bit. And when we got the first three kids, the potty training was kind of like a regimented thing. And I remember we got to Grace, and
well, all rules were different with Grace.
yes, they were. Yes, they were.
The baby, that always happens.
And it was hilarious because like Sarah's just chill about it, and she's like, you know what dawned on me? She's like, I have never met an adult who's not potty trained.
Yeah.
She will do it at some
She'll
point.
do it.
So
Yeah,
whenever she's ready, it'll happen.
Let's just chill a little.
Yeah. But good for Dylan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very exciting.
Awesome.
How about your house?
Our house is full of excitement right now. We've got Maddie here in her last semester of school for her bachelor's.
Yeah, undergrad. That's crazy.
Yeah. Her last, couple of months of playing softball in her life.
Yeah.
That's huge. And she's right now in the thick of applying to grad schools, and she thinks she wants to kind of get a dual degree with a master's in social work and a law degree. So she'll
run the world just like she's always wanted.
Yep. I think she was kind of made for it.
Yeah, so, I think she was.
Yeah. So
That's
we'll see.
All
exciting stuff. Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yeah. And Timmy actually leaves on 2 days. He's going to El Salvador for a mission trip. So
wow. I can't believe that's already now.
It's here. It is here.
Wow.
So,
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got a lot of good stuff happening in the Regan house.
Good for you guys.
Yep.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Retirement Readiness Podcast. As always, I say like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us some likes, and share with your friends. We hope you found it interesting, and we'll see you again soon.
Take care.